think it's very important to understand the big picture and really understand the problems at depth, because only then, so I go into that a lot in the book before I even talk about Bitcoin, because unless we really understand what the problem is, we cannot see why Bitcoin would be the solution. But it becomes incredibly clear that Bitcoin is one of the most important solutions to civilizational collapse once we understand what the problem really is.
Hello and welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. I'm here with Knut Svanholm and Nico from Consensus Network, and I'm your host, Luke, aka BTCPseudoFinn. Today, we are happy to have a special guest with us who I'm going to let Knut talk a little bit more about. So Knut, over to you.
Yeah, today I'm excited because today we have in the studio with us. It's not really in the studio with us. It's, we're all in separate rooms. But we have with us one of my favorite Bitcoin philosophers since a long while back and a longtime collaborator of mine, Dr. Ioni Appelberg, who has just written a book of his own. The book is called Abundance Through Scarcity, and we're going to chat a bit about that book here today. So this is the first time that book has been announced ever, I think. So we're happy to tell you that it will be available in a couple of months from now, maybe, from the Consensus Network webpage. And we're looking forward to everything in that. And if you don't know Ioni from Ioni's earlier works, he's an animator also. That's what he's most famous for at this point. And he's made these lovely little animations about all sorts of things Bitcoin related, including, I think it's like 8 at this point of my texts that have been narrated by Guy Swan and animated by Ioni Appelberg. So very proud to have you here, Ioni. Welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited.
Good to hear that. So, first of all, I'm going to do the ego thing and say that I'm very happy that you finished your book and started animating again.
Me too. It's been a long process.
Yeah, this is also an announcement. We're working on another video and hopefully a couple of other videos, but we're not really going to focus on those during this session. But what we would like to hear more about is your book that, I just noticed when I scrolled through it. I mean, I got a first draft of it like a couple of months back, and I read that and tried to help you best I could a bit. But since then, the book has grown, so now it's much, much thicker than my 3 pamphlets, and I'm very impressed with how ambitious this book is, and the what I've read so far is simply brilliant. It's full of little metaphor gems here and there, and it's written from a medical doctor's perspective. You use many analogies to medicine and to the human body and the human anatomy and life and death and such things in the book, and how the brain functions and whatnot. So, we'd like to talk a bit more about the book. What are your own thoughts now that it's almost done?
Relief.
I know the feeling.
You know the feeling, yeah. I remember in gymnasium. My Swedish professor said that
a gymnasium, a high school, I guess.
Is that high school? Okay, yeah.
Oh.
So in high school
or college, which one is
college.
it? College, probably. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So college. My Swedish professor said that upon choosing a topic for an essay, you should choose a topic that you feel that you cannot write more than a sentence about, and that's what I did, and it turned out to be 400 pages.
And that topic would be Bitcoin.
That topic would be Bitcoin. An aspect of it.
So what was the first sentence you ever wrote about Bitcoin? Can you remember that? Like your first...
That's a brilliant question. Wow. I love doing podcasts with you, Knut.
Yeah, likewise.
If only I could have prepared for that question. I have no idea, but I still want to find out.
You couldn't have prepared for that question because I didn't prepare that question. It just came to mind. So, yeah.
So when we're done with this conversation, I will have to go and have a look. That's a brilliant question. Okay, that's interesting. So should I introduce myself? Maybe you did that.
Yeah,
you did an excellent job of that.
Please introduce yourself a little more. The things I've said so far is that you're an animator and a medical doctor and now an author as well. But please introduce yourself a little more.
So my name is Ioni Appelberg. I am based in Sweden, and I mine fiat as a physician. And besides that, I'm a Bitcoin content creator. So that's about it. And yeah, the book.
Yeah, please tell us a little bit about the book. Can you give us a short introduction, and then we'll expound on that?
Absolutely, that's a good idea. So the title is, I'm very proud of this book, so I'm very happy to get to talk about it. And the title is Abundance Through Scarcity. I'm also very proud of the title. And it's about the effects of absolute monetary scarcity on the economy and human culture, including science, technology, mental health, and very importantly, spiritual health. It's a big picture book. It looks at the long arc of the human species, of human history, how we evolved from being hunter-gatherers to where we are now and what we're becoming next. And it looks at how we have progressed as a species and civilization through the evolution of our technology. And it looks at what Bitcoin as a technology means for the future of civilization and the human species. And my thesis is this: Bitcoin could be one of the most important technologies for advancing the human project ever conceived. And if the Bitcoin project progresses successfully, then we will see a future that is going to be extraordinarily abundant, meaning that we will be richer, we will be freer, we will have more time, we will have vastly increased health spans and lifespans, and we will have technology that will be nothing short of magic. So that's sort of what the book is, what it's about. And well, I wrote it because no one, I felt, had written about the long-term effects of Bitcoin on civilization before. So I wanted to write that book, and I did. And I think it's especially relevant now, seeing that we as a civilization have a choice to make. We are a society in decline, heading toward civilizational collapse. Much like the Romans, the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Persians, the Asian, the Chinese, the Mayans, the Aztecs, and so on, we have forgotten that we have had fairly advanced civilizations before that have collapsed. They're no longer with us. They're no longer on the planet, and with them, they had technology just like we do, but not as advanced as we as our technology. But they vanished from the surface of the planet, and with them, their technology. And the same thing could happen to us. We are a species with amnesia, as famously said by Graham Hancock. We are a species with amnesia. We forget what happens to civilizations at certain points, and we should really talk about the evidence for this as well, for the signs and symptoms of the civilizational collapse that we're seeing, because it's not very evident. If we just go outside, we go to our jobs, we mine our fiat, we meet friends, we go to school, we do all these things, and it doesn't look like civilization is collapsing. But that's a mirage, because a civilizational collapse is not very evident to any one generation. A civilizational collapse does not happen overnight. It takes hundreds of years. So when society is in decline, it can be hard to tell, but we have a lot of evidence that we are a civilization in decline, heading towards collapse. And we should really talk about that, because that's a big part of the book. Seeing like what we are about to face as a civilization, and what can be done about that.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I have a question here on that. Is so do you build the book then showing this, I guess, evidence of you call civilizational collapse, and then build Bitcoin into it as somehow something that might solve these potential issues?
That's the structure I have been aiming for in the last iteration, but I'm not sure that I've been successful. And here I am hopeful that Nico can help me to sort of get the final structure to really convey that message in the best way possible, because that's the overall message that I want to convey. And I mean, it's very dark in a sense. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little bit of this disaster porn, but I'm also prefacing that with a very optimistic note, because we live in such an epic time, and I believe that. Well, I see three reasons for being very optimistic about the future, and one of them is well, actually, let me ask you: do you know what's tomorrow? Does anybody know? I won't blame you.
Do we know what's tomorrow?
What's tomorrow? What happens tomorrow? It's a milestone for humanity going down tomorrow. It's something incredibly important.
Okay, so the specific date, the 29th of August, in 2022, what happens then?
What happens then? We are entering the new space era. The Artemis 1 mission is launching tomorrow. We are going back to the moon for the first time in 50 years. Since 1972, we're going back to the moon. We haven't been there for 50 years. And now we're going there to establish a permanent human presence. And this is going to jumpstart a new golden age for space exploration. And imagine, we haven't been there for 50 years, and now we're bringing technology that is 50 years more advanced than what we had last time we went.
If we ever went.
and not only it's the first mission, the first program, the Artemis 1 mission, that's just the start. We have a program that stretches for decades, and it's going to be pretty epic.
I was hearing all this stuff about what the fuck happened in 1971, but maybe it was all just that we stopped going to the moon in 1972.
When's Apollo 21 happening?
Apollo 21. Artemis is a very good name for this mission. I'm very they've thought about this. It's very fitting, because Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo, and the Apollo program was the first program that landed people on the moon. and now Apollo's sister Artemis is bringing us back. So it's very poetic in a sense. It's a spiritual sibling mission.
Nice.
So that's one thing. Yeah.
Ioni, I have a couple of comments and questions about the introduction of the book and like the premise of the book. These civilizational collapses you talk about, they're almost always accompanied by a devaluation of the money that society uses, right? And all societal collapses or civilizational collapses are preceded by an inflation of the money supply. That's what happened to the Romans and the Mesopotamians and the Babylonians and practically every great civilization.
This is very true, and it's a very good point. And I will absolutely come back to that. I will circle back to that. Let me just finish saying.
Okay.
Let me just talk about why I'm optimistic about the future first, but because I think that's important, and it's going to tie back to the civilizational collapse as well. And we have the new space era beginning tomorrow. Maybe it began with the James Space Telescope. Maybe. Either way, we're entering that era. And the second thing is that we have a new psychedelic renaissance, and that's equally important. We have virtually no legal opposition to reintroducing psychedelics into society anymore. It's a freight train, and it's coming. There's virtually no major university not involved in this anymore. Everybody wants to do research on psychedelics. We stopped the psychedelic research in the early 70s. And since that, so we've lost basically 50 years of research, but just in the last decade alone, we have compensated for that. And we have produced more new science on psychedelics than we have in all of history. And that's very important. And I will come back to why that is important. The third thing is, of course, that we have discovered Bitcoin. So the world is changing. The world is changing fast. And we are diving headfirst into a civilizational collapse and an apocalypse, if you will. And if it weren't for the fact that we are going back into space and reintroducing psychedelics into society, and if it weren't for Bitcoin, I believe that the entire human civilization could be dissolved in a few hundred years. The reason why the space era and psychedelics and Bitcoin are important are because they are very difficult projects that we are using to push frontiers. We need incredibly difficult challenges in order to develop as a technological civilization. We have previously used war for that. Fighting armed battles is incredibly difficult, and that has stimulated a lot of our technology. And imagine being just a Homo sapiens walking, foraging the lands of Africa, looking up at the moon, not really knowing what it is, and then actually landing on it, actually going there. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And upon taking on that mission has really developed us as a civilization. Another thing is medicine. I mean, we get sick, we get old, we acquire diseases, and we get old and we die. And extending the human lifespan, curing diseases, that's another project that is so insanely difficult. But we have taken on that project, and we have developed technologically as a civilization. And now we have space era, psychedelics, and Bitcoin pushing frontiers again. And this is very important for sort of parrying the civilizational collapse.
If I may play the devil's advocate a bit here, there's one word that I react to very strongly when you talk about this thing, and that is the word "we." And like you said something about the human project in the beginning, and we as a civilization, and we are doing this, and we are doing that. And it's a bit like when people are saying we won the World Cup, speaking about the the soccer team, the football team that won the World Cup, when they didn't win anything, they just happened to be born in the same country as the players that did, because the danger I see in this, like wanting Bitcoin to enable the exploration of outer and inner space or whatever, is that it's not up to any we entity to decide. It's up to the market to decide where the resources go. And it might so be that the free market will not choose space exploration as a good thing. After all, NASA and this Artemis project, it's tax funded, and it's not something that people chose voluntarily. It's more that they're forced to pay for it via a hidden threat. They're coerced into paying for it via taxes. So I think, like, if you dream of this, of course, I love space exploration and all sorts of other fat research about stuff too. But I think there's a danger there to attaching your own interests and your own wants and needs to what you think will happen in the future, because none of us knew what's going to happen tomorrow, and none of us will ever know what will happen tomorrow, because that's the nature of the future. So I think the first and foremost thing that Bitcoin solves is that it removes the we from the equation. The we, the collectivist we. Of course, we can refer to us single individuals as a we too, but we have to remember that we're all different, and we all have our own priorities and our own, given hand of cards, which are our resources that we have to that we can spend our assets, our money. We all have limited time and energy and our own free wills. So what do you say to that? Is there anything about that in the book?
The space exploration.
Before you go into that, John, can I just jump in a little bit and add to that what Knut just said? Yeah, Knut, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with we versus me. We is kind of a gateway drug to collectivism, right? I mean, it's very easy to go into this idea of us is better than me, and thinking about me is selfish and wrong, which is, of course, that's not correct, because every we is composed of individual me's. And it just so happens that the best way to reach individual goals, like Ioni said, hey, look at the moon, let's go there. That's an individual goal. That's not like, oh, let's all go there. It's good for all of us. It's just that I want to go there. How do I get there best? And the answer to that is division of labor, right? And that's where Nash equilibrium comes in. And that's like Bitcoin is the purest manifestation of that idea, right? I mean, it's just all about me, and it's not selfish. It's just pure logic. Like, you cannot undertake these huge human projects by yourself. You need help, right? And it's not because of the magical we collectivism that, somehow we are all responsible. We are all individually responsible for all these goals and these undertakings. And we work together to achieve those. And to that end, I would just add one more thing, that is like, we, the so-called we, collectivist we, has always historically been wrong about everything. And we is only correct or right by proxy to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, these inventions and these innovations that come from me, they suddenly become mainstream at some point once it becomes useful and obvious to everybody. Like, let's look at internet and in the future Bitcoin, and then everybody, we, is suddenly right about that because everybody's using that. But it all starts with me, and that's all I have to say about that.
The space exploration will live and die by its benefit to society. We cannot deny that we are a global civilization made up of human beings. We are no longer isolated societies. We are too interconnected to not call ourselves anything but a global civilization. And we can only achieve these really big goals and projects through collaboration as a species. The more flexibly that we can collaborate and the more people that we can bring into these collaborations, the further we can reach. That is not the same as collectivism on a political level in society. It's a bigger perspective than that. We are one species, and in order to become a multiplanetary species, we absolutely must collaborate with as many people as possible. And also, just another comment on that, there are, when I say we, I'm not personally contributing to NASA and the space exploration, but I am contributing indirectly in the sense that there's this narrative, this cultural narrative that we are at risk of overpopulation, and I think that's very wrong. I think if anything, we should fear depopulation, and what we're seeing is depopulation, and that is a sign and symptom of civilizational collapse. The depopulation is a very severe problem, and even if just a tiny fraction of the human population is actually contributing to advancing the human project, we need a lot of people to push uh, the frontiers. For example, we are sitting here using technology. We are using electricity, and it's very important that we do, because the more people that use technology and electricity, the more incentive we will provide to invent new computational platforms, new ways of producing energy, and also to produce more of it. So consumers are very important. I'm not talking about consumerism as we know it today, where I'm not speaking about mindless consumption, but rather the type of consumption that advances humanity. So yes, I'm using the term we a lot in the book to refer to the entirety of the human civilization, the global human civilization, and the Homo sapiens species.
I think the point of we also in the concept of the show, as I understand it, and I have a feeling maybe Nico and Knut also maybe have different views, but here's mine: is that the freedom dioxide that is Bitcoin and increasing the freedom footprint. I think it ties in with this idea that if we are all participating in society in our own way, and that it's a positive thing, then it has these effects that you're talking about. To bring it back to the NASA
Yes,
example, maybe it's
yes,
not this.
very good point. Yes, very
Right.
nice, very nicely put, Luke. Yes.
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to add to you're actually paying for NASA every day by
True.
using a fiat currency, because the dollar is the world's reserve currency, and what the all oil is priced in dollars, hence the word the petrodollar. So whenever the Fed prints new dollars, they print oil, and everyone else pays for it. So like the whenever when you remember Trump, who was called like the biggest capitalist ever and an evil. Here in the Nordic countries, he was called an evil capitalist. But what people don't realize is when he handed out, what was it, like $1,000 per each American citizen during COVID, those handouts were paid for by money printing, and quantitative easing. So everyone else was paying for his handouts. So Trump being a communist was paid for by you, Ioni, in the
Thank
more
you.
free market oriented Sweden. And this is so in reverse from how people think the world works. The simple truth of the matter is that the more money printing we have, the more of a planned economy we live in. And I'm deliberately using the word we here because it is a we, because there's an agenda. It's a planned economy, it's social engineering, and it should go away as fast as possible. And we should use these rules of chess that Bitcoin is, that we've found. And whenever we play by the rules that there's a consensus around, which is the Bitcoin protocol, then we have a way of interacting with each other where we don't need a third party. And ironically, we get the ability to trust each other back. So don't trust, verify leads to a society where we can trust each other to a greater extent, and thereby reaching our goals through fewer means, because the division of labor works and trade works, and therefore everyone's better off. That's how I view it anyway.
And that goes very well in hand with what Luke said. And maybe we should go on and talk about the causes of civilizational collapse and the evidence that we have for it. What do you say?
Absolutely. That was like what my first question was
Yeah,
supposed to be
exactly.
about. But then we, as one does, we went off and we got sidetracked as always.
Yeah. And you mentioned failing money as one issue that precedes civilizational collapse, and that is very true.
The main issue with all civilizational collapse, I would say,
yes,
the big hidden fact from history.
Yes, it's a big hidden fact from history. And historically, pretty much all civilizations have collapsed for the same reasons, as far as we know. And those three reasons are war, disease, and failing money. And speaking about war, this is counterintuitive, seeing that we are living in the most peaceful time in human history, as far as we know. We have fewer hot wars than ever. However, these wars have only transposed from land, sea, and the skies into the cyberspace. We have invented all these proxy wars, and this is the Jason Lowery theory, right? That we have become so good at hot war that we can no longer practice it. We cannot use our most advanced weapons anymore, because if we do, we send ourselves back to the Stone Age. So we had to invent proxy wars in order to keep fighting wars. And wars they're tragic, but they are important. And we have these proxy wars now. And we have cyber wars, but we also have cultural conflicts. We have polarization and weaponized morality. So even if we have fewer hot wars than ever, we still have more conflicts than ever. So that is present. The second thing is a disease. If we look at take for example the bubonic plague of the 14th century, the Middle Ages in Europe, it's the most devastating pandemic in history, as far as we know. And when we think about pandemics, we usually think about pandemics in terms of infectious disease. And we are not seeing any pandemics of infectious disease on par with the bubonic plague. We had COVID, but that's not a blip on the radar compared to the bubonic plague, which killed 1/3 of the European population. But we have other diseases. We have a global mental health crisis. And the effects of the types of war that we have and the diseases that we have on civilization are the same as the things that we had before when earlier civilizations have collapsed. The effects on civilization are the same. So we have this mental health crisis primarily affecting the young. We have an entire generation suffering from mental illness where the symptoms range from mild to very severe. We don't know what's causing it. We don't know where this came from. We don't know where it's going, if it's staying, and we we're not sure what to do about it. But it's here. It's very real, and it's a powerful pandemic. It's a calamity. We also have increasing prevalence, rising numbers of diabetes type 2. That is another type of pandemic. It's not an infectious disease, but we still have rising numbers of diabetes. And the effects of civilization are the same as if we had another bubonic plague, because what these diseases do is that they uh, drastically reduce the workforce, and it costs a lot of resources to deal with these diseases, and it stagnates the economy. So the diseases that we have now, they prevent the advancement of the human project just as well as the bubonic plague would have if we saw it again. And the third thing is, of course, failing money. Whenever there has been a problem, a big problem, governments in all times have resorted to currency debasement to solve these problems, essentially trying to create a bigger budget for handling the problem. And well, it always fails. But the problem that we have now is even bigger because yes, we have currency debasement and inflation and prices rising, and that's terrible. That's bad. But it's even worse than that because it's not only our money that is failing; it's the entire monetary system that is failing. The entire monetary system is imploding, and that's a bigger problem than we have seen in earlier civilizational collapses, as far as we know. And when these three things, war, disease, and failing money, converge, that's a real threat to society. That's a real threat to civilization.
If
Yeah.
I may jump in, Joni,
Go ahead.
I'd like to comment on that by saying that you can't have one without the other,
What do you
because I think that they're so connected. When we say you hear like people like Hans Rosling and Steven Pinker, they always say that we're living in the most peaceful times ever, and there are fewer wars than ever. But that's not entirely truthful, because you could view what you're living in now as an ongoing war between nation states and their populations. So the nation states won. And they enslaved all of us and forced us to pay taxes and pay for inflation
Yes.
all the time.
Yes.
So World War I, which is when we went off the gold standard, when we started going off the gold standard the first time, is not over yet, and it was all financed by money printing. And then Germany was in collapse. The Weimar Republic happened, and then which had a great constitution, by the way, very freedom oriented, looked very nice, and they seemed to have things going for them. And then hyperinflation hit again, and we had the Second World War, also mainly funded by money printing, and by claiming that they had more than they really had in their vaults. And it's still ongoing, and fiat has a lot to do with all these pandemics you're talking about. We have these pandemics of diabetes and obesity, and anorexia, and teenage suicides and stuff. We have those because life is so fucking depressing in fiat land, because of this endless consumerism that does nothing for filling the void in our hearts. We have no purpose anymore, so we just spend frivolously and try to buy happiness, and no one admits to themselves that they really are prisoners of a corrupt system. And so to me, these three examples you gave of why societies collapse, they're all interconnected, and they're all connected to the money printing, because that funds the wars, and the money printing, a side effect of the money printing, is the civilizational decline connected diseases, if you so will. Maybe those weren't as common in Babylonia and Mesopotamia, but they had other diseases to worry about. But they sure are here, and they are sure connected to the money somehow.
You know what I think, Knut? I think you're right on the Bitcoin.
Yeah, right on the money, but right on the Bitcoin. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So you're on point. That's exactly right. So what I'm doing in the book is I'm also looking at what it meant to be a human being when we were hunter gatherers, and what it means to be a human being now. And I'm addressing the issue that you're raising here about being. Why are we so alone? Why are we so isolated? Why are we so depressed? And I'm addressing that issue as well, because it's a very valid question that you bring. That so
Yeah, when you outsource the family's responsibilities to the state, so
yes,
your grandparents are taken care of by the state instead of by you. Then what you're doing is you're and the same thing with feminism. You're replacing the imaginary tyrant, the husband, with the very real tyrant, the state. It's all connected, and it's all making us alone. So
yes,
it's and it's tragic, and we here in this room and many with us believe that Bitcoin can fix this also, but by hearing what we actually want, because Bitcoin cares about not what so much what we say and what we virtue signal about. It cares about what we do and how we allocate our resources. So
I
rules
think the
without
most important.
rulers, it's a solution to everything.
I think it's very important to understand the big picture and really understand the problems at depth, because only then. So I go into that a lot in the book before I even talk about Bitcoin, because unless we really understand what the problem is, we cannot see why Bitcoin would be the solution. But it becomes incredibly clear that Bitcoin is one of the most important solutions to civilizational collapse once we understand what the problem really is. And I mean, we see a lot of. I think we should talk a bit about the evidence for, or the signs and symptoms of the civilizational collapse, I should say. One thing that we are seeing is, of course, the ecological collapse, and we are overfishing the seas. We have no way of how to handle our garbage. It's a very fragile system, and if we look at how we in in the western pocket of civilization are dealing with the ecological collapse and causing the ecological collapse, and compared to shamanic cultures of the South America and Australia and so on, we can see that we have something that they don't have, and they have something that we don't have. We have all this incredible technology. If we collapse as a civilization, we will leave remnants that other civilizations have not. We will leave uh, metal in space and plastic in the oceans. No other civilizations have done that. And that's because we are technologically advanced, more so than other civilizations have ever been. But the shamanic cultures have something that we don't have. They have a wisdom that we have forgotten or lost somewhere. When we look at nature, we see a resource. When they look at nature, they see themselves. They are connected to nature in a way that we are not. We have lost connection in the western pocket of civilization. And when the shamanic cultures look at us, they see a disease. They see that we are lacking something very important, very human. It's just lost in our civilization. We lack connection with each other. We lack connection to the future. We lack connection with nature and with the universe. But they have connection. And when they look at us, they feel sad for us, because connection is one of the most basic and most important human uh, emotions that exist. And we have even lost, we don't even know what the word means anymore. So when I say connection, few people can really relate to what it means unless you have had a high dose of a psychedelic experience. If you've had a deep psychedelic experience and experienced oneness with the universe, oneness with humanity, and oneness with nature, you can really understand what connection is, and you can see that, aha, the Western culture does not have this, and that is why we're causing an ecological collapse. And well, they have it there. We don't have it here. And imagine a imagine if we lived here and we didn't have, for instance, say love. If we lived our lives in a society where love was just lost, it didn't exist anymore because no one knew what it was anymore. We had forgotten it. We had lost it. We had lost love. That would be deeply tragic. And how do you explain love to a person who's never experienced it? Well, you can't, but that person will still know what love is when he or she experiences it. You don't have to teach a person that emotion. They will just intuitively know when they have it. The same goes for connection. When you experience connection, say through a psychedelic experience, if you feel oneness with the universe and with nature and with yourself and with your spouse, it's an incredibly powerful emotion, and we have lost it in the West. So that's one thing, ecological collapse. That's something that has been present in every civilizational collapse to some extent, and perhaps most so now because we have the technology to cause ecological collapse. The late biologist E.O. Wilson, he said that we have Paleolithic brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology, but we don't have the wisdom to pair with the technology that we have. And if we don't have the wisdom, if we don't have godlike wisdom to pair the technology, then the technology that we conjure can be incredibly dangerous. And in the shamanic culture, they have this type of wisdom because they are not causing the ecological collapse in the same way that we are. So that's one very important sign and symptom of a civilizational collapse, the ecological collapse. The second, perhaps even more important sign and symptom of a civilizational collapse is that we have failing institutions, and institutions are failing across the board. We can look at education, for example. That's an interesting example. I think I talk about it a bit in the book, but I think an even more important aspect of failing institutions is that well, there are four groups of people in society that have more important jobs than anybody else because they advance the human project. And these four groups are parents. They are raising the next generation. They are creating the next generation. They are making new people. That's one of the most important jobs there is. And alongside them are scientists producing new knowledge, engineers building the future, and entrepreneurs solving problems. Every other profession just plays a supportive role. I, as a physician, I'm not contributing to the advancement of the human project. I play a supportive role. And what we are doing to these four important groups, we are raising taxes, we are introducing over-regulation and increasing levels of bureaucracy, and that is preventing these very important jobs from advancing the human project. And when we can no longer work towards the future because we have too much regulation, too high taxes, and too much bureaucracy, well, we're going to stagnate. Yeah.
Do you think Bitcoin is a path to love? The way I put it in Everything Divided is that love is very connected to time preference, and that
Yes.
high time preference and low time preference are on the same scale as fear and love. Because when you
I really like that, Knut. They're on the same scale. That's beautiful. Well, I never thought about it, but they are. That's brilliant.
Because when you have nothing, you need to make short-term decisions. Then you're afraid all the time. and you're afraid that you won't eat today, and you're afraid that you won't find shelter, and so on. So the more you have in terms of things you can save for the future, the lower your time preference. And like it's not love itself, it's your ability to love that increases. So you have more room for love in your life when you have a lower time preference.
Yeah, I have a chapter about the Bitcoin mind in the book, is speaking about most of all how we evolve spiritually as we adopt Bitcoin, as we allow Bitcoin to reprogram our minds for low time preference. High time preference is, of course, another sign and symptom of a civilization in collapse. And as you said, Knut, so brilliantly, all of this ties back to currency debasement, essentially. That's where it all stems from. But I think it's very useful to still separate the issues, even if they have a common origin.
Yeah.
Maybe we can throw in a quick quote here from your book, Ioni, because I think we have a fairly fitting one here. Do you think you can read it?
Yeah, this is from my book. The dollar suffers from a pathological growth of supply, necessarily losing its ability to store value. Mechanisms that ought to restrain the dollar's endless multiplication are malfunctioning or non-existent, resulting in an uncontrollable expansion of the dysfunctional dollars. In the eyes of a humble physician, like yours truly, the pathology of the dollar sounds a lot like cancer.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. But what did you say before? Leukemia? That's the type of cancer it is?
Yes,
Yeah.
it raises the question, if the fiat system is indeed a societal cancer. In the book, I speak about society as a megastructure, perfectly capable of having its own diseases. They are not biological, but they are diseases nonetheless. And one such disease that society has contracted is the fiat system. And the best analogy that I can think of to describe what this would be in a biological context is leukemia. Because if the fiat system is a cancer, we would have to sort of ask what type of cancer, because cancer is not one disease, it's 200 different diseases. Breast cancer has as little to do with colorectal cancer as poor eyesight. They're completely different things. But leukemia is the one that fits best. Why? Well, because first of all, the fiat system percolates at all levels of society. There's just not one organ of society that is affected. It's not just food, the food industry. It's just not education. It's everything that's affected. And so we need to talk about either a severely metastasized form of cancer or one that already affects the entire body. Leukemia is a blood cancer. It's a cancer of the blood, and that sort of percolates the entire body. So that's one thing. The other thing is that leukemia is a disease of the immune system. The immune system resides in the blood primarily. We have the white blood cells in the blood. We also have other lymphoid organs that have immune functions, of course, but the immune system is primarily in the blood. So the if the in the fiat leukemia, we have white blood cells circulating the body, going to where there's damage, and attempting to resolve an infection, isolate an infection and kill it off, or go to where there's damage and heal that damage. But if the infection, or if the white blood cell, if the immune system is broken, it cannot do that. So if there's a cancer cell, for example, and the immune system cannot take care of it, it's going to grow. And the same is true here. If the fiat system, the money of the fiat system are like broken white blood cells. They cannot go to where there is damage anymore and solve the problem. They can go there and do a little dance, but it's not going to solve the problem. They will still target the issue. If we have damage in society, we will send money there, but if the money doesn't work, it's not going to repair the damage. The same goes for the body. If we have cancer cells or infections or wounds, we need to send the immune system there. But if the immune system is broken with leukemia, the cancer cells and the infections are going to spread.
I was just going to say, maybe we have the second quote that you can tie this together.
Okay. Yeah, this is also from that part of the book. Money is the immune system of society. Like the immune system of the body, money goes where there's damage. If society suffers a wound, a structural injury, say from a natural disaster or an act of terrorism, money flows to the wound and initiates the healing process. Like the immune system of the body, money coordinates resources to repair structural damage.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. On point.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly comment on the perils of technology and technological advances, like internet, for example. It's simultaneously the best thing that ever happened to humans and the worst thing, because it's kind of like a social disease transmission protocol, right? I mean, diabetes, feminism, communism, depression, these are socially contagious diseases spread over the internet, like instantly everywhere.
Jamie Oliver. There's another one.
Maybe that too. I haven't caught that one, thank God.
Yeah, but there's technology is a two-edged sword. It will always be. We wouldn't create dystopia if it weren't because it also creates utopia. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's this, it's like from a Black Mirror episode, but people are actually putting chips in their hands now. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I've seen it. Swedes are flocking to do this.
Yes.
Extremely stupid move.
Yes, I think worldwide. I don't know if it was just in Sweden or if it's worldwide, but they said something like 15,000 people already have this.
Yeah.
So just put a chip in the hand, like about here, and you have your credit card there. You open and lock doors, and you do all kinds of things with it. I mean, it's kind of cool. It's a cool technology, and it's going to make life easier. But
for the
there's a
CCP,
caveat.
It's going to make the life easier for the CCP. That's what it's going to do.
But I mean, we wouldn't have invented this if it didn't think that it's going to be adopted somehow. And of course, it's dystopian. It is. Technology often comes with technology has an inherited dystopian nature. The technology really has the power to corrupt us and destroy us. So that is why we need the wisdom to pair our godlike technology, but we just don't. So these things happen.
Well, that's where I think Bitcoin comes in, because like my latest thoughts around Bitcoin and what it does to us is like that Bitcoin's killer app is really you. It's all of us, because of how much it changes our views on what life is about and what value is, and everything like that. So I think we're heading towards a society where we're incentivized to save rather than spend, and we're incentivized to help other Bitcoiners because we all want Bitcoin to succeed. We want to pump our bags, for lack of a better term. But when everyone's a Bitcoiner, that notion does not go away. We still want to help each other, because we will have experienced during hyper-Bitcoinization how extremely powerful that insight is, that the best thing you can do with your life is to help other people succeed. So when everyone's on board with that, and when there's no overconsumption anymore, then we don't need money. So by running, the necessity for monetary transaction goes down. So by running this experiment of Bitcoin in the back of our heads, we unlock something that was in us all along. We just couldn't find the private key to it. So yeah, the Beatles were right. All you needed was love. They just hadn't found the fucking equation yet. But now we have. So what I realized is that both you and me, Ioni, and Nico and Luke too, we could have done all of these Bitcoin careers, or for lack of a better term, that we've had, without ever holding a single Satoshi or using a single Satoshi. We could have done all of it by just helping each other like we do now, by having this conversation. And so it's
But
already
Bitcoin
all
catalyzes
there.
it. Yes,
Yeah.
it's
So
already there.
it's
Bitcoin catalyzes it. Yes.
yeah, it makes us, it reprograms us, and that's so that we can find what really makes us humans, and what we could be if we just turn to helping each other instead of, being egoistic because of high time preference and fear, because that's the opposite. And it ties into how Bitcoin disincentivizes violence also, because when you cannot know how much another person owns, and you cannot take it by force very easily, then the best way of getting something out of value back from that person is by providing them with something of value. So we're incentivizing value for value and good interactions with other people by just finding these beautiful chess rules of Bitcoin that we all can agree on, that these are the best rules because they obviously benefit everyone who plays by them. So it's just a matter of time. And to me, I want to speed it up. I don't want hyper Bitcoinization to take 300 years. I want it to happen tomorrow because it would be better for everyone. Of course it would.
Knut,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Nico.
You're talking about I. So maybe the killer app of Bitcoin is not you. Maybe it's me. Like you is kind of like an extension to we. Right.
Yeah, but I can't I can't call my talk at the conference Bitcoin's killer app is me. That sends the wrong signal.
Yeah.
but
Knut,
it is true in a way.
I made a tweet the other day saying that the more I think about it, the more I realize that the most important thing that Bitcoin is going to do for humanity is invoking spiritualism. We are becoming spiritually enlightened via Bitcoin. And
yeah, that's a tricky word to define, though, because many people, including myself partly at this point, but still, the word spiritual has a
it has some connotations.
and it has a bad ring to it in some
word.
sense.
We have to reclaim that word because it's. I mean, you would agree that you have a mental health, right? You would agree that you have financial health, that you have a social health. You also have a spiritual health, which is not the same as mental health or emotional health. It's on a bigger.
It's your ethos.
That's part of it, absolutely.
And I think all of these are connected to your reality, and they can actually have an impact on actual reality to a larger extent than it seems at first glance. You can actually alter your reality by focusing differently.
You know what I think would really transform your life, Knut?
Yes, psychedelics. Psychedelics. And I find it very fascinating that I've come to the same conclusions that all of these people that have taken psychedelics have without ever doing them.
One of the hallmarks of the experience is that you cannot describe it in words. You are experiencing something that is very, very human, but we just don't have the words for it. It's very weird in a sense.
Yeah, I'd love to sometime whenever I get the opportunity to. But I'm a family man, and the option to go out in the forest and have a shamanic ritual and stay away for 4 days very rarely.
No, you do it in bed with headphones, and you do it in bed with headphones.
All right.
Yes, I would echo that. Like these rituals that people do and go to these retreats, that's centralization of the mind. That's you're basically using in a way a high priest of sorts to guide you through the experience, but actually the experience is itself, it's very much, it's all you, and that's
Yes,
the
it's
whole
all you.
point. So
And that's very.
yeah,
Now you're putting your finger on something very important, Nico. That we are sort of we are training people to be guides, but maybe that's the wrong approach. Maybe we just need a general form of education where we can have people in our family, our friends, to be our trip sitters and be our guides. Because one of the most important things about this psychedelic experience is that you have someone present who you really know and trust, and that person, uh, someone that you know and trust very well, would triumph a very experienced guide that you don't know and don't trust. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, a question here, Ioni. It must have been quite a decision for you to go public with that you're a proponent of psychedelics, given that you're a medical doctor in the Swedish system, which is Swedish laws on drugs are quite harsh, and like we're not. Um, it's definitely not in Swedish culture, the Swedish culture that I grew up in. That it's not very okay for a doctor to promote drugs that aren't manufactured by institutions, approved by the state. So was that a difficult decision to like to come to? Like, I need to share this experience, and I need to go public with my, you know, experiences with psychedelics. Was that hard, or didn't you? Maybe you didn't think much about it at all.
No, it wasn't hard. I just don't have the energy to be anything other than who I am.
That's a good answer, and that's like how I think people should be in general, and I think Bitcoin does that to people. Like, I mean, it ties in well with skin in the game also. If you're
Also,
honest, if you're honest in your public profile, then you're honest to yourself, and like being honest and putting yourself out there the way you are instead of like as some form of facade is very powerful, because it makes you rethink yourself, I think, and question yourself, and hopefully you'll end up even more honest when you do.
yes, yes. And also, I've had this experience before. I'm an MMA fighter, and that was not always a cool thing to be in society.
So
I don't
you're
know
an
if you
M.
remember.
So you're an MMMMD.
Sure, if you like. I don't know if you remember, but just like 10, 15 years ago, uh, people saw MMA as modern gladiators. And I mean, in a sense, they are, but they had this, it had this very negative connotation to it. And it was not something that a physician would talk about openly just 10, 15 years ago.
Nope.
And it's the same thing with Bitcoin. I mean, it's not a cool thing everywhere. It is now, but it wasn't 5 years ago. If you,
Heavyweight
if you,
boxing is still forbidden in Sweden, right?
it is. If you were a Bitcoiner, if you were talking about Bitcoin openly just 5 years ago, people would assume that you were either a criminal or a pedophile.
Yeah, at least it's not quite like that these days, but it's still not easy to be a Bitcoiner in
Yeah.
public, and it's certainly still advantageous to pick your situation where you will tell someone
Yes.
you are if
Yes.
you don't want to screw up a relationship anyway.
So I think that
Yeah.
you can very much relate to my position on being a proponent of psychedelic, because it's the very same thing. I have I'm very well read on the subject. I understand what I'm talking about. I know the research. I know the science. I trust the data, and I truly believe that psychedelics are being reintroduced in society, and it's going to do good. If we look back in the 60s when we had this first psychedelic renaissance, we were not ready for it. We were not ready for it, but we are now. I truly believe that we are now. We are ready for it in a way that we did so many mistakes in the 60s, and we understand
Well,
so much more now.
the biggest mistake was Charles Manson, wasn't it? Like it sort of
Oh,
ended
well,
with that.
no, we did a lot of mistakes. We understand now that those settings are very important aspects of how you consume psychedelics, and we just had no idea back then. We had no idea. We didn't know about those set and settings. Uh, we didn't know what psychedelics were for, and now the narrative has changed. Now it has become this tool for understanding the mind that has never that we just haven't used before. And you can think of it like, if you want to understand uh, the speech centers of the brain, it's not enough to study language. You have to look at the brain. You have to see that the Broca's area, which is sort of the motor, the area responsible for the motor function of speech, is connected to the Wernicke's area via the arcuate fasciculus, is called, and you cannot figure that out by simply studying language. You have to look at the brain. But if you only look at the brain, you will never see the beauty of language. You will never understand what language is by simply looking at the brain. And the same is true for psychedelics and understanding the mind. We have tried to figure out consciousness and the the experience of being a human being, and by looking at the mind, by putting people in MRI scanners and just looking at the mind, looking at the brain, and that only takes us so far. Now that we have psychedelics means mind manifesting. So we can actually see what is going on in the mind in a different way than than we are now, just in a normal problem-solving state of mind. When we enter that other room, that psychedelic room, we're no longer in our problematic or in a state of mind where we just solve problems. We are in a different dimension, if you will, and we can see our thoughts being generated. We can see what are the integration between mind and body, and see how it all emerges. It manifests what's going on in the mind in a very concrete way. The psychedelic experience is a very scientific thing if we treat it like a scientific thing. It's probably the best tool for understanding human consciousness that we have.
Can
Beautiful.
I uh this has been a long thread on the psychedelic bit, but there's one other line we had going about how Bitcoin could also lead to kind of the spiritualization, and I'm wondering if maybe you could tie those two together to bring this all yeah yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could try. This is a big topic. This is a big topic. But if we're going to condense it, I could say that, as we've touched on uh, before in this conversation, Bitcoin reprograms the mind. And if that is difficult to understand, we need to back up a step and realize that what we are algorithms. Our brains are a set of billions and billions of algorithms that make you who you are. And these algorithms change. They can be reprogrammed. You can reprogram your brain, your algorithms. For example, if when you learn a language, that is an operating system that determines how you act socially. If you're an English speaking person compared to a Chinese speaking person, you will um, only by switching between those languages uh, manifest different personalities, because they are different operating systems for the mind. The same goes for money. Money is also an operating system of the mind, but it's a different kind of operating system. It's an operating system that doesn't really affect, well, it does affect personality, but not in the same way that language does. Instead, it's an operating system that affects time preference. It affects how we see time. It affects how we see the future, the present, and the past. And if we have a form of money, if we bathe our mind day in and day out in a form of money that uh, that holds value in the long term, we will be able to think long term. We will be able to think about the future in ways we will not if we have a form of money that loses value in the short term. So Bitcoin reprograms the mind to give us low time preference. But that is not all it does. That's an important base for a spiritual journey, because we will never go on spiritual journeys if we are pushed into the present by money that loses value constantly. So when we have when we are enabled to think about the future and have a long-term mindset, we can go on these spiritual journeys. But exactly why and how Bitcoin triggers these moral explorations and invokes these spiritual journeys, I'm not entirely sure. I've thought about this a lot, and I'm not really sure. I'm hoping that other people are thinking about this as well, because Bitcoin clearly invokes spiritual journeys and catalyzes moral exploration. And I think it has to do with the quality of the money. The fact that we become that we adopt a long-term mindset.
Yeah, and just to add real quick, how it also illuminates how misinformed we've been all our lives, and
Yes,
how much
that's very
bullshit
important. Yes.
we've been attacked with through all sorts of systems, like the word social sciences. It's all bullshit. It's just opinions.
Seeing
So-
through narratives is
so,
one very
yeah.
important aspect of Bitcoin. It helps us. It's an orange pill. It helps us see through the cultural narratives that we have. It's a spiritual awakening in itself, and that may possibly contribute. If you have experienced one spiritual awakening, you are likely to experience several spiritual awakenings. And Bitcoin allows us to see through the narratives about how money works, what we need a state for, and all these ideas that um, make society what it is. It really helps us see through all that and see it for what it is. It helps us wake up to a colder world, but a truer world. The same thing is true for psychedelics. We come closer to reality. Psychedelic is not a drug like alcohol. Instead, we uh, come into a second gear with which we understand reality. We come closer to reality. We see it in. It's a very sober experience, and the same is true for Bitcoin. It helps us to see reality as it really is.
And
Yeah,
I would
love this whole thing.
I would just add
Go
to that, like Terence McKenna said that psychedelics don't work on stupid people, right? I think it's quite similar
Nick, you're close to
with
Terence McKenna. That's awesome.
that's,
I'm so impressed.
I think like now it occurred to me that it's the same is with Bitcoin. Like it doesn't work on stupid people. Like it won't change you spiritually. Like maybe it's possible that masses lack the capacity to transcend spiritually, so Bitcoin won't fix that. But what Bitcoin does make possible is to have better leaders for the masses. And this goes back to what I said earlier about like the we is always wrong and only right by proxy to me, which is not physically me, but so-called thought leaders.
I'm more optimistic than that. I think Bitcoin will help those most unfortunate the most. Like it will help poor people more than it will help rich people.
In theory, yes, but that's not the point that I'm trying to make. I'm
No,
just saying that
I see
it will
your
help
point.
people as a proxy. The people who need it the most and can benefit from it most will not take the initiative. So it's up to us.
Yeah, this sounds like a good start for another 1.5 hour discussion on
I was about to
some
say
other
the
show.
same thing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think this specific line even is just. I hope we can talk again, Yoni, because this was fantastic. I can't wait
phenomenal.
for your book.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
will read it enthusiastically. I hope we're getting a finished translation too, because I think that would be brilliant.
Count on it.
Are you
What
going to read that one, Luke?
in Finnish? I
Yeah.
only read in Finnish these days. I have to duplicate the time. It's got to be language learning plus the Bitcoin learning at the same time.
Okay. Some final thoughts. Yeah, I'd like to thank Ioni for coming on, and I think this was an absolutely awesome conversation. And like Luke, I hope we can have. I'm pretty sure that you will be a steady guest on this show. Like every
Thank
10th
you so
show or
much.
something, you'll be here, I'm sure, because I think there was a very valuable conversation. I think you're one of the most underrated voices in the Bitcoin space, and just be aware of that when Bitcoin 10x's, so will you. Uh, so
Thanks so much.
I just like to add some stuff about what we talked about last week. The auctions for Hodlonaut are now over, and I'm very happy to announce that the Bitcoin Infinity Key public key artist proof number 1 out of 3 that Fractal Encrypt made sold for 57.5 million satoshis. That's more than half a Bitcoin. And my little signed special edition of hardcover book that I made just for this thing managed to bring in 2.2 million sats, which I'm also very, very happy about. So thanks to everyone who has contributed to Hodlonaut's legal case. That money is all very well spent, and we'll see here in a couple of weeks where this story of David Goliath type story will end. But we know what team we're on here at Freedom Footprint. This is the address down there, defendingbtc.com. That's where you go to find out how you can help Hodlonaut in these forthcoming weeks. Ioni, thank you very much for coming on, and I'm looking forward to your book a lot. And hope you get the time to get to one of these conferences this autumn. If not, you're always welcome to Spain or wherever I happen to be in the world. So I'm sure we'll meet in real life sometime too. You're one of those that I am yet to tick off that box with. So yeah, thank you, and thanks everyone for listening to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to
listening.
add to that. I couldn't be happier to have Ioni publish with us. Like, it's been a wonderful discussion and wonderful to listen to you, and I couldn't be more honored to be privy to your book as one of the first people, and help editing it and make it into the best version that it can be. And maybe I can maybe this is a good moment to share my screen as well, to showcase maybe some of the cool art that we have there. Keep in mind, of course, this is a very early version of the book, and there's going to be a lot of editing to be done. But extremely excited about this release. I think, like Ioni said in the beginning, like this is an untouched field in Bitcoin, and I wouldn't say necessarily like an entry level book, but this is a really deep, really, really meaningful book in my opinion. And I think that it's a unique approach, and it gives kind of like comprehensive philosophic mathematical treatment for the socio-economical, spiritual, even geopolitical implications of transferring from a fiat empire into a Bitcoin empire. And I'm just super humbled and excited to be a part of this. So you can see probably the art right now. Let me just show you the other ones as well, because this is really cool.
For those listening,
here's
you
one.
might want to
Here's
check
one
out
with
the YouTube video for this to get a preview of the art. But there's some quite striking images. The one we're looking at now is of a US dollar having some things happen to it, and some wonderful art going into this book.
Right. I'm not gonna give it all away, but expect great things from this. This is gonna be available obviously in original English at first, but then multiple different languages. I'm fairly certain of that. So yeah, if you wanna get into this project, you think you want to read it, you want to translate it into your language, contact me anytime. We'll get it up and running, and this is gonna be huge. Really excited. Thank you, Ioni.
Thanks for listening or watching. This has been the Freedom Footprint Show. And thanks again to Ioni Appelberg.